Agostino Pintus, thank you so much for coming on the Edison Podcast. How you doing today?
You bet, man. Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for inviting me. Greatly appreciate it.
Oh, it's, our podcast is about for business owners and other people getting into stuff to understand that you're going to make mistakes, large and small. And for one person, it's one thing. And for another person, it might be, what we think is not that large of a thing is huge to them. So there's no right or wrong reason or answers, I should say, when I ask these questions about, what is your biggest Edison moment, whatever that is to you. But before we get any of that, before we got started, before the mics were hot, we were talking, and I know you're in the multifamily business, and you're also you teach a lot of stuff, help investors get into stuff. And I know I've been in the space, I've been in this industry for, I don't know, 27 years. So I totally understand everything that we're going to talk about, but do me a favor and no acronyms.
No. Yeah.
No, because we sometimes just say it and then I go, okay, what does that mean for somebody else? Kind of.
Yeah.
All right. So you're in that space now. What did you do prior to that?
So I used to work in corporate. I used to run large enterprise IT for public and private companies. And, it was fine. It was okay until one day it becomes not okay. And when does that happen? In the world of technology, every couple of years as an executive, you have a big target on your back. Usually there's a shakeup in management and you get thrown out. New guy comes in, you last another 2 years, 3 years, maybe then you're out again, so the higher up you go, from what I could find anyway, working in corporate, the more likely you would be to get canned eventually, especially in the world of tech, right? Especially in the world of tech, and especially in companies where there could be a change in management or a change in leadership that'll impact you. And here you are. So one thing I learned in corporate, even working in corporate, is to have multiple investments in other things, especially real estate. Like I didn't know that. I started back then, but it was all doing single families. But for many people that are in corporate today, you ought to be doing real estate of some sort, investing in a syndication, investing in other deals, so you can get that passive cash flow coming in. And you also get the tax deductions, you get the accelerated depreciation, you get all those sorts of great things to help offset the income. No one told me any of this stuff. I learned it on my own.
Most people think that working for somebody else, that is job security, when that is the most insecure you could ever be, is working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I relate it to, if you're into football, it's like the football teams. You didn't do good that year, the whole team is gone. You know what I mean? They get rid of the management and new management comes in and everybody's gone. And that's the same thing with any corporation, any type of business. Is if you work for yourself, that is security. Working for somebody else, there isn't. But I don't think it was real. My industry has always talked about passive income with rentals, whatever that works for you, whether it's multifamily or some people like single family. I never did. I always thought single family was to live in, not to actually have, rentals, because you lose one person, you lost the whole income. Where in multifamily, you lose one person, it's not that big of a deal.
Correct. Yeah.
And so to me, but now more than any other time in history is everybody's talking about multiple sources of passive income.
It's become way more important today than it's ever been at any point in American history, if you think about it, right? I think back in the 50s, you can have one salary and pay for the house, the car, your major expenses, your grocery, and the entire family can survive on one salary. In the 80s, it was two salaries. Both mom and dad had to go work just to keep food on the table, keep a roof over your head, and have a couple of cheap cars. Now, people can have two jobs and they can't even afford groceries anymore, let alone all the other expenses you have in your home. So
they can't afford a house.
They can't even afford a house. Yeah, they're renting now. We're becoming a renter nation. So, I mean, sure, if you're the person that has the assets and you're renting them out, kudos to you. Great, super. But the economic tides have shifted, right? And it's not going to get any better. It just won't. It's not possible. Like the buying power of the dollar continues to go down, and it's not going to get any better. And you have to be invested in cash flow to help offset the deterioration of the dollar. You have to. There's no other choice.
Right. I agree with you. You're talking to the wrong person if you're trying to get someone not to agree with you. and I think for a lot of people goes, how do I get going? How do I get in this environment? But so my big push is I had a book come out called Financial Freedom, Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership. And it's really about that, getting that first house for you to live in. So you secure yourself and you know what your payment is going to be going forward. You know everything about it. You're building equity. But then the last chapter of my book is how to buy more real estate. Right. But my key is to get them that first deal, where a lot of times I see investors who are telling everybody, oh, I just saw the other day, what's his name? Grant Cardone. He's like, don't buy real estate, the house you live in, rent and buy the. Yes and no. It's easy for you to say when you got that huge 20 million mansion in LA now or wherever it is. Right. But most people need a place to live, and that's security. And that's how you get that first. And then you're like, okay, this is easy. Now let's focus on what more we can get and invest in other things. That's my take on it. Everybody else has a different take, but I just think that you should get your first place first, and that should be where you live. So, going forward what that payment's going to be.
Yeah. I think it depends on where you're at. Like here in Cleveland, for instance, that's where I'm at right now. You can get a nice luxury place for, if it's only just you and the wife, maybe one child, you can live in a very, very nice high rise for $1,800, like a class A plus area.
That's
like
a rental. Very, very, you mean a rental?
A rental. Yeah. And it might be enough room for, a young child and a husband and wife. Okay. Might be fine. Might be okay. Why would you do that? Well, because now the big expense you're putting into the asset itself, the equity, is not dead equity. You can use that equity for something else, right? Again, it depends on what you're into, right? But you can't really do that in a place like New York City or Chicago or even Miami anymore. It's just not possible, right? You can't find those types of houses. But in the Midwest, you can still find, even if you want to live in a house, you can still find a nice $250,000 house, like a nice place at a good, decent, clean neighborhood, and you'd be okay there too. But I think the whole premise is centered around using whatever equity you have to go and put it either towards your personal education or put it towards an asset that produces money. For instance, I don't really talk too much about investing in single families, right? Even though we do, we have a small portfolio of single families. You could buy a single family here in Cleveland for $65,000 and rent it out for $1,100 a month.
Why wouldn't you buy that instead of living in the apartment you were just talked about?
Right. You could.
Because $65,000 payment on a mortgage is not $1,800 a month.
Correct. Right. I mean, it's C-class, it's a C-class asset. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for, right? Depends on what you're looking for. It depends on the individual and what they want to live in too, right? There's a lot of dependencies. Yeah.
Well, I try to get everybody to buy their first triplex, fourplex, duplex, not a single family home. Let's do that first. You can get into that with, right now, Fannie Mae's allowing you to get into with 5% down if you're going to live there. And FHA, you can do a 3.5% down. But the problem with FHA, it's this whole other calculation, but the new Fannie and Freddie is allowing you to get in for 5% down. That's the first thing you should do. There's your first 4 units. Once you get in there, technically you're supposed to be there for a year, unless something changes in your life and you decide that you have to move somewhere else.
Yep. No, I love that idea. And as a matter of fact, we have a mastermind and we talk about how to help people get into those types of deals, because as a matter of fact, I have a friend, husband and wife, that currently do that today. So they bought a fourplex to live in one of the units. They're renting out the other 3, and you know what? He works at a very high level corporate job, right? Company. If as soon as I mentioned it, you would know who it is. It isn't like they need the money. They want to have that cash flow coming in, pay for the asset, and then once they do that, then they can go live somewhere else. And then this asset is basically paying for their next house if they wanted to, or do it again, maybe do it 3 times. It's a phenomenal way to build value. Absolutely. Love that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm in California, so it's very expensive. Yeah. And friends of mine, I helped them buy a duplex, a block from the beach in San Clemente. I don't know if you know where that is. That's Orange County. And this was 7 years ago, and it was $950,000. And I helped them buy an FHA. And they moved in there and they rent one side out Airbnb for almost $5,000 a month. and they've been doing it since they
Wow.
bought the place. The place went from 950,000, now it's worth 2 million, and their cash flow, they have enough, they don't even have to pay that the thing the other side pays the mortgage plus, and they're going to split up the garage now into other units because that's how it is down there. And they've been trying to buy a single family home to move the family into, but it makes no sense to do that economically.
Yeah. But I think that works there perfectly, the Airbnb model, just because of how landlord unfriendly that whole
California
area is. Yeah. So that's perfect. That's perfect.
It's not as bad as people think it is, right? With the landlord thing. It's the problem was California put in a rent control, which
yes.
But now it forces us to raise the rents 8 to 10% a year. So it actually helped the landlord have to keep the prices up and not go, okay, you've been a good tenant. If I raise the rents, you're going to leave. No, it's automatic. We got to put this up in order to stay compliant with the rent controls.
So it's pretty funny that their constituents that they're so-called trying to protect have to actually pay more.
Well, I guarantee it's because their constituents owns rental properties. They just don't tell you that they are. That's and I don't want to get political, but that's typically the Democratic way is they don't tell you everything what they're doing. They're telling you they're trying to help you as they are fixing their own pockets.
Exactly. Don't even get me started, man. But yeah, we're on the same team.
Yeah. See, I live in California, in Modesto, which is the Central Valley, and we're a conservative stronghold. We're not only around the coast, and that would be LA.
Yeah.
And Bay Area are the other way. San Diego's totally, more Republican, Orange County. But once you get to LA, and then you also get the Bay Area here close to me where I'm at, it's a totally different people. There's just so many of them. They control California.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or they manipulate votes and such.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
We'll be here for an hour on a different show.
Did you say have multiple shows?
Yeah, I do a radio show that I've been doing for almost since August of 18 called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on. We talk about real estate and financing and local politics, and it's 51 to 71,000 listeners a week, so it does pretty well.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
But that's where I get to be able to complain, because it's talk. It's on iHeart, so it's Power Talk 1360 KFIV. So
very nice.
And but that's enough about me. It's about you, not me. So you've been doing this 10 years? How long have you been doing this?
It's been about 8 at this point. Well, it was 8 with the commercial stuff. I've been doing real estate for about 18 years and started doing the whole single family, small multifamily back then when I was still working in corporate. But I was just doing it on a very small scale. I was just a dabbler, And it wasn't until, like I said, about 7-8 years ago when I ended up getting canned once again. And like I said a bit ago, the opening, you get in the corporate world, working in technology leadership, very rarely do you last more than 2 years, right? Maybe 3. But I got to thinking, like, how many more times am I going to do this? How many more times am I going to put the future of my family, like where we're going to eat, in the hands of someone that doesn't care anything about me, right? In this low risk job, right? It didn't make any sense. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on this real estate thing, because even though I worked in corporate and had my ups and downs doing that little portfolio that I built many years before was still throwing off little bits of cash here and there. It was I just wasn't focused on it. So once I bared down and started focusing on the business, things really, really started to open up. So now we have 3 lines of business. We have our acquisition. We acquire B and C type assets. I mean, I'm a big believer in just focusing on one market and get really, really good at one market. That market's Cleveland. We do development, which includes ground up development and adaptive reuse of office. And we do specifically urban infill. And what that means is that areas where there's already traffic, there's already people living there, we're building in those markets. I'm not building 300 units in the middle of nowhere. I don't do stuff like that. Let someone else do that. I want to be where there's traffic there, there's money there, people are transacting. If I can insert myself in there and provide value to the community, I'll pick up some of that money too. It reduces the risk of development, right? The third line of business is net lease. We do single tenant net lease. So we buy like Dollar Generals, Dollar Trees, VCA animal hospitals, like anything that has a corporate or franchisee guarantee. We have a blind pool fund that buys it and gives nice, steady return. Are you going to become a multi-billionaire doing net lease? Probably not. But if getting a steady return on your income or steady return on your investment rather is important to you, that's what you want to do. Monthly return. Can't beat that. 7 to 10%. Okay. It's fine.
So are you buying the building or are you just leasing it and then releasing it?
No, we're buying. Yeah, that's a good question. We buy it. Yeah, we buy the asset. Yeah, we buy the asset and we run the asset, and Dollar General is our tenant.
Gotcha.
And the cool thing about Dollar General is that they're not complaining. They're not going to knock on your door and say, we're going to be late for the rent, or I didn't get my Section 8, or whatever nonsense they come up with. It just shows up like clockwork, right? So that's why we really, really like those types of opportunities for our investors. So it's great. It's great in that regard. And we do help people get into the real estate game, like I said before, too. So we also do that. We have an education business too.
How long have been the education business been going on?
Well, it's funny because the education business started, I don't know, maybe it's been on and off. About 4 years ago, we started it. And then every once in a while, I'll get distracted with something, and then I have to put it on pause to go work on a giant project. But now we've been really making a big push to help people get into the real estate space, just because of where we are in the economic cycle. And it really is important to me to help people get into the game. So I'd say over the last 12 months, we put a real big push into helping people get into the real estate game. So we help people get into the small multifamily deals, the one you described earlier. And we do help people get into the big syndications, raising money, talking to investors, getting into big assets, that type of thing. So we have 2 separate masterminds that meet for 50 weeks straight. And we go over deals, we gamify it. It's so much fun. It really is. And we have online components, but all of it's delivered by yours truly. I'm the one doing the whole thing. So it isn't like I just pawn it off to some dude who's never done this before. I'm the one that's doing all of it, which I'm sure you've seen those guys.
I've been around forever. So the problem with syndication to me is, like I said, I've been around forever. The last time it came around was right before 2008, and people lost their butt. The only difference now is we're going to be going up for the next 20 years plus, just because we have not built enough properties anywhere in the United States or even in California. We're short almost 3 million properties in California, and nationwide, I think it's 18 million. So there's a lot of properties. And if you look at the going forward over the next 20 years, if we even built where we're supposed to be at and over that, we're not doing that. We're still adding to that deficit. So even if we did turn it around and got it cleared up, it would take 20 years. And then you got the pandemic babies coming, which is just as big as the baby boomer generation. So you have another problem. So we're never going to get caught up. And that's why now it's a totally different way. A lot of people are like, well, you're too late into the game. No, you're not. If you're trying to flip homes, you're too late in that game. But in other types of, because right now what people don't realize, there are some issues with commercial coming that because of how people bought them a few years ago, that they huge opportunities for other people.
Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, I like Grant Cardone sometimes. Sometimes he's got good information.
Sometimes.
Yeah. But you know what, though? It's like, I remember listening to one show, he said, it doesn't matter how much it is. Just buy it. Just buy it. Just buy it. Who cares? And I'm like, what? Don't say that. That's incorrect. That's not true. I mean, there's guys that I belong to a lot of different groups, and one deal is in South Florida. They were trying to sell. They'd bought this deal for $400,000 a door, and the rents were $1,600 a month average.
Wow.
And this was an apartment community, like A class in, Lauderdale, I think, right? This deal I don't need to pull up my calculator. That deal does not cash flow. And what they're doing is they're counting on the greater sucker theory. They wanted some other sucker to pay $450 a door for it. So they're going to hold on to it for 8 months and unload it to some sucker. I never did deals like that. If I couldn't get this thing to cash flow on day one, I'm not doing the deal. Like, there are some guys in our space, and again, you know who they are, right? You've seen them, you talk to them. They just want to get the deal so they pick up their fee. And I never did things like that. I
So
won't
what do they get a fee for helping you find the deal?
They get an acquisition fee.
Okay. Kind
So
of like wholesaling.
Yeah, sort of. So let's say, for instance, I find a multifamily deal. Say I find a 200 unit deal, right? What I'll do is I'll make the pitch and I'll get the investors to sign on. Well, maybe I might pick up a 3% acquisition fee, right? And then I pick up a fee to finance the asset, right? I pick up a fee for that. I pick up an asset manager fee on a monthly basis. And then when I do the refi, I pick up another fee for that. And then I pick up a disposition fee too. I mean, listen, I'm not bashing the guys that collect all the fees.
I didn't
and stuff.
take that. You're just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, but that's yeah, exactly. That's how they do it. And because we never did that. I never did that. It's like I was my interests were aligned with the investors, so I didn't do it that way, right? We only get paid when the investor gets paid, and that's it. So it makes for a very different model, right? So for me, the deal cash flowing was the priority. If the deal didn't cash flow, I didn't do the deal. It's a very unique way of doing things. And it wasn't because
how it's supposed to be done.
Well, you'd think, right?
If it doesn't cash flow today, when will it cash flow? If it's 12 months in the future, that's not so bad. But if it's because the problem was for so long, this is how California is. For so long, people focus not on the cash flow, they focus on the appreciation. And that is the worst thing to do.
That's right. And I mean, there's guys that do it. And there's guys that have great success doing that. Like, I mean, it's one of those things you have to have a bankroll to support the asset to do that. And not everyone can do that, right? And if you're in New York and New York's your home market and you've been doing that play for a very long time, then it's easy. It's a no-brainer. In this market, this is a cash flow market. Cleveland's a cash flow market. It's not an appreciation market. You will get appreciation, but the primary is cash flow. That's what you're buying for. New York, you're buying for appreciation. Maybe you'll get some cash flow, but that's secondary. Two different markets, right? And what happens is these guys from New York come here to Cleveland and they'll buy some piece of garbage in East Cleveland and they'll pay like $80,000 a door and they think they're getting a steal. It's like, I would never buy anything in East Cleveland personally, because I know that chances are it's probably hollowed out. All the copper's been ripped out and it's probably going to, it's probably going to be on fire in about the next 6 weeks or so, So it's like, it's like, you don't do deals like that.
Just get some good insurance.
That's it. There you go.
Hopefully it burns down to get paid.
That's funny.
So a lot of people, I mean, the ones I talk to, I've talked to a bunch of people, and the ones who do it well, do like you say, they find a certain area, they find certain things they want, and these are the things we look for, and that's where we buy. We don't buy in any other places. And our plan is to buy as many doors as possible and fix them up and sell it. And I think it's a lot of them are the little bit older apartment complexes that need a little bit of work, but that could get them up to where they want it to be. Is that kind of what you're doing too?
Exactly. But I will caution you with this, or caution the folks that are listening, is that when it comes to the C-class asset, which is what we're talking about, workforce housing, okay? Workforce housing has gone through what I believe to be a transformational shift since 2020. The days of doing the whole value add play like we used to do leading up to 2020, that was the bread and butter. Everyone did the same sort of thing. You buy some C-class asset, you fix it up, you make it better, you make it a great place for the neighborhood, for the kids, and they end up spending their whole youth there, and everything's fine and dandy. Ever since 2020, things have really transformed in our nation. Why? Well, we printed money off into oblivion that caused more inflation for people even back then, more so than even today, right? If you think about it, because of how fast it occurred. But now there's greater protection for anybody in workforce housing, almost nationally. I mean, it's not as bad, like say, for instance, here in Ohio than it is in California, but it is different. And what am I trying to say? It requires a higher degree of effort to run those properties. You have to really know what you're doing. Operations is always been king, but even more so today than ever before. And if you screw that up, you're going to suffer. and there's a great deal more protection for those sorts of people. So it makes for a very tough time for owners to really become profitable if you're just going to be lackadaisical about things. It's way harder now than it's ever been for that type of asset class.
So what do you focus on? Different levels?
B's and A's and
what's
and
the big difference? All right, so for people who have no clue, because this is normally a business thing, we just kind of went
sure, yeah.
A, B, and C. What's the big difference?
Yeah, sure. So A class is going to be usually it's the brand new stuff, new asset that was just built fairly recently. Let's call it, maybe 0 to 5 years, A class. Okay. And then your B class is going to be, say, 6 to maybe 10, 11 years, something like that. And your C class is going to be anything usually older than 10, 15 years and older. And then your D class is going to be your war zone. Like, you just avoid the war zone. Just don't even buy there. I mean, certain people do, and they do very, very well. It's a very different level of management style that's required to do that type of asset. Not everybody can stomach it, right? And the various
usually
classes,
wearing vests, and they're
carrying... you're wearing vests, you're wearing a helmet, you're carrying multiple guns. We're here
to collect the rent, please.
Yeah. It's not a pleasant knock. It's a bang on the door, right?
Yeah.
But A
and
class,
it's a metal rattle kind of door that's right before it.
That's right. But A class in Cleveland is very different than, say, A class in Dallas, which is going to be very different than A class in Miami. If I say A class in Miami, you're thinking it's going to be a high rise with a rooftop pool and a bar and a doorman and all that stuff. But A class in Cleveland, you may have some of those things, but you're not going to have the pool. You're not going to have the fancy touches, right? Because it has to be palatable to the market and the expected rents you're going to get. So it varies. So that means building the right asset for the right market as a developer, anyway, matters a lot. You don't want to overbuild for a certain market. So. Yeah, that goes in. That's part and parcel of on the development side, but same thing goes when you're acquiring assets. So yes, when you said acquiring beast type stuff, yes, it's mostly trying to go a little bit up market, or at least buying a C class in the hopes of converting it to a B class. So that way you can pull in a better quality tenant that doesn't have those sorts of issues that we discussed before of not paying rents and all these other troubles. And I mean, I hate to make it about that, but it is. I mean, this is the world we live in. That's how it is. I mean, we live on an economic planet, as Grant Cardone says. It's like, that's how it is.
Well, it's an investment. The reason people buy these things is for investment, and then the second reason to have people live there. But it's really for the people like, oh, corporate make money. No, the whole corporation is there for the shareholders. That's the whole purpose of what they do. And if you don't understand that, you were not taught right in school, or you haven't read enough books. And it's the same thing with land. Everybody thinks the word landlord is bad. Can't say that word anymore. No, it's not. It's bad is when you don't pay your rent and expect to get away with it. That's what's bad.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, socialism has certainly made a big push as well. So it's I'm probably a few years older than you are, and I've never seen anything this bad.
I doubt it. I just drink a lot of water.
Bad. There we go. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad now from when I was a kid. I can't believe it.
Communism used to go to jail for. Where they beat you. Now socialism. So it's not socialism. Socialism light is what they call it.
They call it democratic socialism.
Oh, they call it socialism light.
It's socialism. Yeah. So whatever you want to call it, right? It's the same thing. It's like they even put their own name in it. The Democrats know that they can't. They don't even hide it anymore. It's crazy.
Well, I think the worst thing we're going to see is because of how many people came across our border and still coming, and there's no place for them to be, and there's no housing. What they're going to do to, unfortunately, investors like yourself who have all these properties. The next thing they're going to be overrun with some of these people and if you saw anything in like where they kicked the cops in New York, they're trying to arrest one guy and there's six and eight of them beating on him, which we don't normally do. But if these people come from other countries, and that's okay in those countries, but not here. And we got other major problems coming, and we need to make some changes. So
yeah. We're in the fourth turning right now. If people don't know what that is, if you Google or YouTube, the fourth turning, There's a great 10-minute video. Look it up. But it talks about how we go into these 20-year cycles, and we're in the chaos cycle right now. That's where we're at. So you should definitely study
kind of
that.
close. Remember the movie The Warriors?
From the 80s, right?
Yeah.
The
guy with the gun. Warriors come out to play. Hey. Anyway, if you
right.
ever watch that movie, they show New York in the 80s. That's where we're going.
Yeah. That's right.
The rundown cities, the issues that are going on, the homeless people, the whole 9 yards. It's all because inflation and everything else that came through the 70s and where we went into the 80s. That's where we're going. And if we don't make any changes, there was one person who came and saved us, and that was Ronald Reagan. He was a great president. I don't care where you are. And you don't really know that because I remember as a kid, but you would listen to him. He's the funniest guy in the world. He was so funny. I didn't realize if you listen to his older stuff now that you see on TikTok occasionally, it's like, wow, he was a funny president.
Yeah. He was very good. And I think he had to balance that, the political with the entertainment, because that's, it's funny. I saw an old photo. What was it? Oh God, what was his name? I forget the president's name now. The general with he was all decorated with all of his medals. Eisenhower?
Yeah, that would be Eisenhower.
Yeah. And I'm like, that would never happen today. Like, we need a guy like that right now. We need a general, like someone who can actually run this country, right? The way it needs to be run today, because it's in chaos. But no, I think that's part of the problem, is that Americans now, they want to be entertained. It's bread and circus.
Actually, I don't see. What I've found is pretty much all of us are in the middle. There's just the little fringes on the outside, the 1% on each side, that causes the most noise and causes the most problems. Us in the middle are like, I don't even want to deal with it. My wife like, I don't want to hear about that shit. What if you don't hear about it? You don't know what's going on. You don't understand. You need to understand what's going on. So, because the problem in my area, 58% came out to vote in the last election. That's a problem.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I try to explain to the younger generation isn't stupid. They're just like we were when we were younger. We listen to what someone says and we run with it and vote that way because we think that's the way to vote. And unfortunately, it's always the wrong way to vote. And the younger generation can control the vote like nobody's business. And so they need to be talked to by us, our kids, everybody else, and let them understand what's going on through all this. Because if you can go back in history and watch everything, you'll understand why we are where we are. The whole purpose of whitewashing history was to get rid of the Democratic generals and everybody else who had slaves, because they didn't want to know that the Democratic Party was founded on slavery. And they fought slavery. And I know we're on a totally different podcast now. We're going to get canceled, but that's okay. It's my podcast. If people don't realize, the Civil Rights Act, when it was being voted on, the Democrats did a filibuster to stop it from being passed.
But Ed, you can't say that. That's not true. The party switched. Don't you know?
No, here's the difference. All right. The Democratic Party of the 50s, with JFK, those people, is the Republican Party of today. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Right. The caring about the worker, the caring about that. That's a different party today. That's not that party you think the Democratic Party is. That's a totally party that went so far left. They don't care about the person. They tell you they care about you, but they don't care about you. I'm a veteran. They don't give a shit about us. If they did, they wouldn't have taken over the VA over the last few months, having them processing migrants stuff and not taking care of our vets who are in line for millions of them for their stuff.
Right. That actually sacrificed for the country.
Right. The people who allow them to be able to do their stupid shit because they sacrifice for the country, they don't take care of them.
Well, the thing, look, it's an election year, right? This is why they need the voters. They know what happened last time. They can't let it happen again. So miraculously, this is happening. But
last
anyway,
time they won. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I guess it depends who you ask, right? They won.
Oh yeah, hold on. Yeah. We won't get into those. So I mean, right now this is 20. This is what are we in February? We'll be February tomorrow. So this is January 31st when we're taping this, and you can tell I'm old. I just said tape. We got 2020, Super Bowl, 2020, same election. The question is it going to be watched this time and done right?
Right. That's right. Who knows? Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show today. I'm sure we could talk for a lot more about other stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to send you a link to my other show, my radio show. I would like to have you on, and we can talk about that right after we get out of here. Anything else you want to add before we go today, Agostino?
No, I mean, hey, listen, I just hope that the listeners got some value out of what we're talking about. You know, I still say real estate is where you got to be, 100%. You have to start thinking about other ways of getting revenue in your life, because the dollar is losing value. And if you're going to be doing the work, you're going to be to try to accumulate money using your own efforts, you're just gonna work until you die. That's it, because you need passive income to offset that. And real estate is the only game in town that allows you to do that. It really is. So hopefully people hear that message.
Yeah, for me, I've seen that for years, but for me, I could always make so much money in my industry that I never had to worry about money until someone stopped the pipeline and we went up 5%.
Yeah. That's right.
The moment that pipeline was stopped, I'm like, oh shit. Use my language. I knew we were going to go bad. I didn't realize we were going to go this bad, because that just showed, and that showed me that even though my industry is so lucrative and you still need additional sources of income, no matter what industry. And that's what taught me, because that recently I was like, holy cow, I've done so well and I had so many other things going. And then this really affected me. So.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody listening, look up buying power of the US dollar over the last 100 years and just look at the map or look at the chart and then prepare to be flabbergasted, because now it's like the dollar of today is worth pennies compared to the dollar of 100 years ago. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
What are you going to do? Agostino, thank you for coming on. People, you can go check out his website, bulletproofcashflow.com. Check him out, talk to him, and let him know you heard him on Edison Podcast. All right, sir. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.